thought Robert would be blown. Anyway, Robert became obviously a hero of a whole section of the movement in this country, the ones that knew about it. And one of the things I want to say that I think is really important is that when Robert died, Robert spent 5 years in Cuba, 4 years in China, finally came back home, moved to Idlewild, Michigan. And when Rob was here, and he died in 1996, Rosa Parks went to got driven all the way to his funeral in Monroe. And she got up and talked about how much Robert Williams meant to them. She said, all while we was out there on the front lines, we knew you had our back. It was such an important chapter in that whole movement. So when you get a chance, you get a copy of Negroes with Guns. It's a little thin book. It ain't long. They even got a movie out on it called Negroes with Guns, but it tells you the story of the whole of the Civil Rights Movement. That's just as much a part of the Civil Rights Movement as any of the nonviolent acts, but you only given one side. They make the dialectic be Martin Luther King versus Malcolm X. No, that wasn't it. It was Robert Williams versus Martin Luther King. Malcolm X was sending money and supplies to Robert Williams. Robert Williams was the man. Brother Rob, we call him. So anyway, I just want to tell you that because you got to learn that part of the Civil Rights Movement, else you ain't going to understand how we got where we got. Look here, I got these are two more of our daughters. And just more.
Yay!
With this whole thing of Robert Williams and Mabel, Jen just told you about Rob on the radio, but Mabel was spinning all the music in the background. It was really good to hear that type of stuff coming in. The other thing, the deacons for self-defense, a lot of them have passed away. But they were riding with us in our freedom cars. You know, we had cars that they donated to us that we had to ride all over Louisiana. And you know, we were supposed to be nonviolent. We were in we were nonviolent in demonstrations. But when we got on those highways, we ran into the Klan. And a lot of time it got to the point that the deacons would ride with us to our various destinations, and they would have the pistol right there on them. Because if you were stopped, we trained all the civil rights workers. If they tried to stop you, if you have never drove fast before in your life, you better put your foot all the way into that engine. And so a lot of us learned to drive like that. So the deacons from self-defense also had heard about Robert Williams and became a part of that historical development at that time. So you know, they were the ones that were defending their community.
Right, and so I want to kind of go a little fast so we can get some more of this in. I had I spent most of my time in the factories. I hired in the Ford Motor Company in 1963. And when you grew up in this city of southeastern Michigan in the early 60s, you were a young male, you were going to go to one of these auto plants. You can't, most of the young people can't fathom how many plants it was. I mean, Chrysler had 29 plants in the greater city of Detroit. They had 66,000 employees. They were the largest employer in the city of Detroit in 1966. Ford had the huge Rouge complex, then you had Ipsy and all these other plants. GM had Cadillac and Fleetwood and Connor Stamping, and then you had Kelsey Hayes and all these other associated plants that made parts to autos. So if you grew up as a young male, you were going to go to one of these auto plants. We used to call it baptism. So I got baptized in 1963 at the Dearborn Stamping Plant in the Rouge. I didn't last long, no. I worked for 19 months, 9 months, and I got fired. Let me tell you, I got fired from Ford 3 times and Chrysler twice. I learned my contract language and how to maneuver within the contract by practice. Nobody teach me that. But I want to tell you that I think it's relatively important because what happened was that I was in a little group down in Wayne State called Uhuru, which was freedom in Swahili. And we used to run around organizing different demonstrations and stuff in the city. And we used to hear about Robert Williams, I was just telling you about. And what happened was that Cuba was added to the U.S. passport as a country you could not go to. I wish they had brought that passport. But they had 5 countries in '63. They had China, Korea, Vietnam, Albania, and then Cuba was added. So what happened was the Cubans, a federation of students, started organizing groups of students from the United States to come to Cuba en masse in defiance of this travel ban. So the first group went in '63, and the second group they was recruiting for went in 1964, and they wanted to make sure they had a group of blacks on this trip. So they contacted our little group at Wayne State, and we signed up. 4 of us out of our group signed up to come. And my daughter asked me this question before, but how I got there. When they sent you a letter telling you you've been rejected, that meant you've been accepted. And then I was contacted and told to go get a Greyhound bus to Chicago and get a room in the Piccadilly Hotel at Hyde Park, which I did. And once we got there, we got a phone call, said get your bags and come to the Grand Central Station, which we did. We got to the Grand Central Station, we were met by a contact and caught another cab to the airport and went to O'Hara and flew to Philadelphia. In Philadelphia, we were given first class tickets and flew to Paris. When we got to Paris, we met the other students. Some had left the night before, some had left different cities in little groups of 4 and 5. Altogether, it was 85 of us. We spent the night in Paris and then caught another plane to Czechoslovakia. Once in Czechoslovakia, we got a Cuban plane, and it stopped at Ireland and Newfoundland, and then go back down to Cuba. So we had went halfway around the globe in order to get 90 miles from home. That's the way you travel. Charles Simmons was with me, and Charles was partners together, and we had Luke Tripp and Charles Johnson was the other 2 on that trip. But Cuba was a revolutionary laboratory. It changed my life and my world outlook on everything. When it got to Cuba, Robert Williams was there and met us at the hotel, took us and sat us down, started telling us the details of the Monroe story. But we met all these other revolutionaries, man. We met Chicken Raymer, and these guys that was fighting in Rhodesia, that had been wounded and sent to Cuba. We met Muhammad Babu, that led the revolution in Zanzibar. We met revolutionary Albanians. We met revolutionaries all over the globe. And we just had an opportunity to go and talk to all of these people and tell our story. Yeah, we played baseball with Fidel Castro. We had a meeting with Che Guevara. We had a chance to do the whole island. We was down in Cuba for 2.5 months before we came back home.
And in fact, he packed up to not to come back here.
Well, I didn't have much then anyway. So it wasn't easy, but it was easy. So anyway, I just trying to tell you. Well, obviously, when I got back, I went out before to check on my job. They told me I didn't have none. They only gave me 1 week leave, and I came back 2.5 months.
Took a week just to get to
so then I went and got in line at Dodge Main, and got me a job at the Dodge Main plant. I ended up at Dodge Main. We ended up in Wildcat strikes, and I ended up getting blacklisted out of the auto industry. They had us written up so that we couldn't be caught 100 feet from the gate of any Chrysler plant on the globe. On the globe. I mean, I couldn't go to South Africa to a Chrysler plant and be caught 100 feet from the gate. So anyway, what happened, I I had to go out and get me a new name and a new social security number and get back in line to go take me a job. So I went back and got in line at Ford Motor Company. And, now I learned, see, because I went to another Ford plant and I worked for 30 days, they caught up with me and fired. So I'm talking to the union rep trying to figure out how to beat this. He said, listen, if you get a job and you work for 1 year and they don't discover you, then you home free. So that's what I did. I went out, got me a new social security number, new name, went to Ford, got in line, got a job, went to the foundry, cut off all my hair and act like I got sedity. So anybody you knew in the past, you wouldn't speak to them. So I couldn't trust nobody. And I worked like that for 19 months. I'm 7 months over the limit. You know what? They called me in and fired me anyway. We organized for my case. And this guy by the name of Dave Moore was my rep at Solidarity House. And we went in there and he said that my case, the only case he ever had, where they had guys from O'Rourke, who was the head of Ford's North American operations, sitting in my empire here.
Wow.
And we went in there with all them attorneys, and we prevailed. They gave me my job and my seniority with no back pay. So then I went on back. That's why I was able to stay at Ford and retire, because I had to take me a job and keep it for a while. So anyway, I just wanted to try to give you that kind of background on stuff as we went along. There's 1,000 stories in between that, but I'm going to switch back over to Miriam.
Real quickly, and then we